Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Boss Rush here on July 24th, 2026. So good to be here with everybody today, and I am joined by two of my regular co-hosts, Dean Takahashi.
Hello.
And Susan Cummings.
Hello.
Hello, hello. And our special guest today is Stanley Pierre-Louis. Stanley, we are so happy to have you join the live stream today. Stanley is the president and CEO of the Entertainment Software Association. We're going to dig into the work that the ESA does to kind of, forward the support and health of our industry and a whole variety of stuff. So, Stan, welcome to the live stream.
Thanks. It is really great to be a part of this conversation and to be with you again, Chris, and to be with your august panel. Which is going to get even more august.
I was going to say, channeling Conan O'Brien. Oh, august, SAT word. Excellent job. And of course,
is it August already? Or?
Yeah, August. Yes, autumn, August.
The intellectual level of our program. I don't know about this.
Yes. When you threw out that word, my monocle popped out. So anyway, it's so lovely to have you join us today. And of course, for all of you that are joining the live, if you have any questions for any of us today, please make sure you go ahead and put them there into the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can. But and then Mark Delore is going to be joining us, I think, for the last half hour of the live today. So yeah, without any further ado, let's just jump in and how's everybody doing? Are we good?
Hot.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It's very hot over here.
You're getting no relief over there in the UK, are you?
No, we are not. It's I don't know. I can tell you what hot sounds like in Fahrenheit. And I can tell you what hot sounds like in Celsius, but I can't convert between them. So I don't know. I think it's like in the 80s, but it's crazy hot for us.
I was going to say, now you sound like, an American trying to go ahead and deal with, the metric system. Can't convert.
Yeah.
Can't convert at all.
Yeah. I can tell you that it's 27 degrees outside Celsius, and that's pretty hot. And it's been consistently that for as long as I can remember, it feels like. But I couldn't tell you exactly what that is in Fahrenheit. But
We had a hot spell last week, too.
That's right. And if we had our friend Richard Brown on the live or in the chat there, he would certainly admonish us for not being able to do that math there, right?
I hung out with Richard and developed.
Yeah. We're going to have to tell us about that as well. Well, over here in DC, it's a little cooler now, isn't that right, Stan?
Yeah. We kind of had a very, very hot spring, humid, unseasonably warm spring, and now we've got the beautiful spring weather at the end of July. So we've kind of flipped it.
Yeah. It doesn't even make any sense anymore. It doesn't even stop trying to make sense of it, right? Kind of thing. So, and Dean, I don't hear a fan going there, so he must be nice and cool there. And
you want me to turn it off?
No, please don't do that, for goodness sake. It makes my echo cancellation, noise cancellation stuff go absolutely bonkers. So, Dean, thank you for not having that on today. But all right, gang. Well, why don't we go ahead and jump into why we have Stan on the program today. So, Stan, do you want to tell us about kind of where have you been lately? And let's go ahead and jump in and talk about the ESA. The efforts and the programs that ESA has to support the industry, and we could take this wherever we want to go. So once again, this is all up positive, support for our industry. Let's go and jump into the conversation. So
Thanks so much. It's great to be here, and I'll tell you a little bit about ESA, maybe a little about me, and then I'll tell you where I was earlier this week. So ESA, as you probably know, but for those who don't, we've been around for around 31 years. We were founded back in 1994 to support the industry and serve as the voice and advocate for the U.S. video game industry throughout the United States. We provide a lot of representation for our industry in the halls of Congress and in state capitals with federal and state administrations. And what we try to do is convey to policymakers, influencers, thought leaders about the power of play and the power of our industry and what we do that helps us culturally, that helps society, but also has a great economic impact on the nation and on individual states and the like. And so we spend a lot of time showcasing our industry. And we also try to explain to our industry what is going on in various state governments, in the federal government and policymaker minds, because it's a two-way street. Those policymakers need to understand what our industry is about, and we need to make sure that we're understanding what they're trying to accomplish so that we can work hand in hand. So the primary focus of our work is really working with policymakers in the media and certain members of the general public to showcase what our industry does. Obviously, we had a very large past in operating a large trade show that everyone attended and knew about and loved. And we started that a few years ago. And we launched a new business summit this year called ICON. We hosted the first one in Las Vegas, with the goal being bringing together not only leadership from our industry, but leadership in other industries to demonstrate the cross-pollination of our industry, the power that industry has beyond our industry. And so there were panels that brought together sports leagues that also license their brands and athletes to video games, and why it's important to them beyond revenue, because that relationship is about audience, it's about expanding influence and the like. We had investment professionals on stage. We had Tony Hawk on stage. And so it was all around a conversation that looked about how games impact other industries and other audiences. And it was a really, really great conversation. And then the other part that runs independently within ESA is ESRB, the Entertainment Software Rating Board. They provide the E for everyone, T for teen, and various other information about what's in the game so that consumers, but especially parents and caregivers, understand what's in the game before they make their purchases. And so that's been a real benefit to the industry and to consumers and parents and families. So those are probably the key things. And then we partner with other trade associations around the world, both in our industry and outside, so that we understand where policies are headed and what's happening in other jurisdictions, so that we can stay abreast here and try to complement what we do with the information we get from others. I'll pause there on ESA because there's a lot more to say, but I'll talk about where I was earlier this week, which was a lot of fun. Many people may be familiar with Games for Change, the organization that tries to promote the good of games. Yeah. Every year they host a festival, and it's a great opportunity to see games in action, to see play in action, and to learn more about how games are impacting society in positive ways. And so it was a great opportunity to hear from leading thinkers, whether they're academics or practitioners or game developers, about where games are going and how games are being employed for the good of society. And then I had an opportunity to interview Alan Lewis, the head of corporate communications at Take-Two Interactive, about the work that Take-Two does in trying to develop the next generation of game makers and storytellers. So it was really about their community engagement, their philanthropy, and the work that they do to ensure that the next generation has support through programs or direct work with their own employees. So it was really fun to hear about something Take-Two doesn't talk a lot about. They're quiet about their philanthropy and outreach, but they're very impactful. And so it was great to shine a little bit of light on that.
I love that. I love that.
You guys also had some news on EA Scholars this week, right?
So yeah, ESA also runs we partner and run a foundation. It's a separate organization, but obviously the ESA Foundation is part of what we do, and it's part of our industry philanthropy. So we host a gala every year, night to night. It occurs during GDC week in San Francisco, and we invite industry leaders to come and help us raise funds so that we can provide scholarships. And this year, we're presenting 31 scholars with scholarships from around the country, covering every demographic. And it's exciting to see students in college who want a career in the video game arts and sciences. And so it's an opportunity for them to get a scholarship, but also be part of mentoring with our industry, and then to create their own network of scholars so that as they continue to progress in the industry, they've got a touchstone. And increasingly, we're seeing some of the ESA Foundation scholars entering the workforce within the industry, which is just great to see that there's a great opportunity for them to continue laddering up within our industry.
Yeah, I mean, providing more pathways for more people to get into the industry is super important, and it's great that the ESA continues to lean in not only for, again, the charity work, but also how do we enable, again, more people just starting off their career, new storytellers, new technologists, new artists, right? Yeah. Yeah, no. Dean is the only one that is losing the audio. So
now you're back.
Couldn't be boss rush without some
Dean, it must be on your side because we're all here listening. And
no, it was you.
It was me.
It disappeared for like 30 seconds.
We were all here.
Oh, it did?
I could hear you the whole time, Chris.
See, so it's them. See, like I told you, listen, Stan, like I told you, they're just problematic.
I think who's the boss, really? Who's the boss on Bus Rush?
Exactly. Well, they are. You all are. I just get to be here and serve you as best I can. So anyway,
very weird.
Once again, anything that we could do to continue to help, bring new storytellers, new artists in is great. So it's wonderful to hear the work that you continue to, that the ESA continues to lean into, right? Dean, now that we have audio back, where are we going?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm good. I hear it.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Susan, any questions, comments?
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm good.
Well, Stan, like we do talk a lot about the news that happens. So I don't know if there's any particular news stories outside of the ESA that you've been, paying attention to a lot, I guess.
Well, so because we serve as the tip of the spear on so many issues for industry with policymakers, we're always scanning the news to see what's happening, where policymakers are focused, to see how we can help them understand our industry better so that as they make policy decisions, we're a part of that solution. Obviously, there's a lot of news on tariffs, and that affects console makers. And so we spend a lot of time trying to remind policymakers of the importance that consoles have on video game distribution and access, and that making those more affordable for consumers enhances the ability for people to enjoy games through that device. And so that's a constant thing. There's also a lot of conversation in Washington today about online safety, particularly as it relates to children, and not just in Washington, every state capital and every governor's office, because they're all experiencing a lot of issues in their states. And so we try to explain how games are different than the areas of their focus. And one of the things that's been really helpful to our conversation is the work that our industry has done in trust and safety. Over the past 30 years, we've had a head start in many ways, in part because of the founding of ESA. At that time, there was a lot of concern about the impact games might have, particularly in young people. And by creating an ESRB that gave people the information they needed, it really satisfied the congressional concerns, and over the years, the state concerns. And today they view that as the gold standard of entertainment industry self-regulatory bodies. What we do really resonates with them, and what they've seen companies do in the meantime of, using, whether it's human moderation or using technology to help moderate sites, they've seen that the work is there, and that's very different than what they've seen recently on certain social media sites. And so that differentiation has meant that we end up being an example of how to do it right. There was a White House report a couple of years ago over the concerns of online behaviors, and they dropped a footnote in the social media section saying, you ought to be looking at the video game industry on how they manage this, both through ESRB and their trust and safety mechanisms, because their history of working on this and the experience they have could benefit what you should be looking at. And so you're starting to see certain social media companies try to come up with either their own rating systems or enhancing their online safety protocols. But when we go and explain what we've been doing, we have the advantage of not only the long history, but also their experience in it. When we start talking to someone about setting up a device in their home, either for themselves or for family members, they remember those things and they see that it's real. And when they see some of the reports that had come out from the Federal Trade Commission on how retail would respect game, descriptions, but also age rating advice. When they go to buy a game, it's very different than buying a DVD or a CD. And so they found that even in their mystery shopping, the training that came from the video game industry was much more enhanced than other entertainment industries. So we've had a long history that we can lean on. And the question becomes, as our industry develops and as games start to add new features, how do you continue to distinguish what games are versus some of these other platforms and tools? So that becomes the challenge. But when we talk about games, there's an immediate recognition about that history because of the experience people have. And then the other part of that is kind of funny. We started talking about this a little bit more a couple of years ago, but the demographics of who games is really broad. You have more people over 50 than under 18 who play. And there's been an increase of people 80 plus who play. And it's increased quite a bit over the past few years. And when you talk to people about it, first they scratch their heads, and then I had a senator say, I brought my mom to the doctor. She's in her 80s, and she pulled out her phone to kill some time while we were in the waiting room, and she's playing Candy Crush. And so all of a sudden they didn't think, well, my mom who's in her 80s is a gamer, but then it resonated that that's something that she did. So
right,
all of a sudden it's not just child's play, it's everyone playing. So all those things help our industry.
So let me.
I like that. I like that phrase of like history doesn't always repeat itself, but it rhymes, right? And
Sure.
the game industry back in the day was mostly single player, and the concern back then was about violence, and I think what it came down to was moral panic about kids and what they're exposed to versus research and reality of what games have as an effect on people, right? And I think that was a solution that the ESA sort of seized upon, that I think really solved the problem, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and basically secured the right of creative freedom for game developers when it comes to making the kind of games that they want to make, I think, and game violence was not connected in the research to having negative effects on kids, right? So I would sort of hope that as we get into online safety now for children in a completely connected world now, with a lot of I think litigation and regulation happening around social media, that we sort of remember this approach, that like moral panic is not the solution, but research and some kind of fair basis in law, I think, is really what matters here.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I mean, look, if you look at the history of the ESRB and why it even came into being, right? It was because of that panic or a misunderstanding of what this content was. And then it was also, let's face it, big companies playing out some of their role, right, in front of Congress to affect some change. And so, the industry started to make sure they put the ratings in place for themselves versus government overreach, right, to do so. And Stan, as you mentioned, right, it's been a highly effective organization in really demonstrating and communicating to parents and players, right, what they can expect, what they should look at. And, you do all that you can, right, to put that information in front of them. What I do find really interesting, and Dean, I mean, it is that moral panic thing. I'm just thinking back to, oh my goodness, every generation of, what D&D is doing, or, back in the day, right, the waltz was considered like the dance of the devil, and you don't want your daughters, performing this dance, because it's like every generation has their moral panic about things that kind of come in sideways, capture the imagination of a generation or two, right, and then grow, and people, may not fully understand those things. Where I feel super positive about the way the industry it will be viewed going forward really speaks to something that, Stan, you just mentioned, is the number of people over the age of 50 that are playing, right? That senator who said their mom was playing Candy Crush. Would they have questioned it if their mother, 80-year-old mother, had started playing solitaire on their phone? No, they wouldn't have said, oh, she's playing a video game. Yeah, she is. She's playing a video game of solitaire, but because they hadn't lived with that type of game as a normal engagement for people of that age, there tends to be this bias or this misunderstanding. In a talk that I've been giving in multiple places since last fall is really about the rise of Gen Xers, right, as they move into retirement over the next 10 years. So you'll now have, the oldest generation in society and the youngest generation as the absolute bookend biggest audiences to play games, right? Because they all grew up, playing those games. And so again, when we have that generation that first grew up appropriating video games in their lives, becoming the oldest living generation, all of a sudden, a lot of those discussions kind of hopefully go off the table a bit, right? Because now literally everybody is playing. Thoughts? You all talk while I go ahead and bring Mark in. He went ahead and just joined. So you all go ahead and comment on that. Is Chris wrong and full of crap? Or, is there something to it? So please discuss.
I guess, I would just add that the situation is different today, right? And it's maybe not fair of us to just sort of dismiss everybody who's got a complaint about the game industry as engaging in moral panic, right? I think there are some very serious issues that are here today that are different than what we saw 20, 30 years ago, and a lot of it is being taken from the approach of protecting kids from predators.
Yes,
right, and online predators, and the sort of negative effects of being on in social discussions, right? Yep. So I think so social media has taken some hits. Facebook actually, Meta actually lost a case, and I think it's because of that research approach where people are digging out evidence about the intentions and behavior and plans that happen inside these social media companies, right? And
hold on. Park your brain for one big second. Let's go ahead and get Mark in here. Hey, let's see. Where's Mr. Mark? There he is. What's happening, buddy?
Hey.
All right, Mark's in. So Dean, Mark, welcome, buddy. So Dean, I do not disagree, and I was not implying that the argument about games excludes the importance of protecting our kids, right? And that's not just for video games. That's all forms of content, right? That's all forms of engagement. And I love that.
It's interesting though.
You guys are so serious today.
I was going to say there's a different intention there, right? Where it comes to social media, I think what's horrifying is that there's a lot of bad intention that was never there in video games.
Right.
No one made D&D for the sake of hurting people or bucking responsibility for these things.
Yeah, that was bucking responsibility.
We're seeing with social media as these things come out. There's a lot of bad intention,
and it's also why some of the countries have taken the approaches they have, like say Australia, I think France soon. I guess the worry, Stan, and my question for you is if this starts bleeding over into games and say games are social too, we might consider banning them for children as well, and then it takes us back to old arguments, I think, right? Or relitigation of something that
that's definitely a challenge around the world. We talk to our partners in different parts of the world to see how the arguments are hitting, and part of it is that every region of the world thinks of its structure is different in how it regulates. So, for example, in Europe, because of the history of world wars and secrecy, there's a very proactive regulatory state. The United States was really founded as a reaction to feeling constrained, and so we have a more laissez-faire, reactive way of regulating. And then if you go to Australia or Brazil, they each have their own traditions, and so each one is different. As you put them together, they start to maybe resemble a trend, but it's hard because they each face different hurdles. So in Brazil, for example, they've been contemplating legislation around online safety for kids for some time. And we spent time with partners down there looking at how do you distinguish games from some of the other areas of concern. And ultimately, they've decided we're going to roll everyone in to our regulatory state overnight based on an incident that occurred online, not dealing with games, but they decided they wanted to do that. And we had a chance to talk to regulators about that. And one person in particular said, look, in a lot of your societies, you have access to information, to broadband, to technology. We're dealing in a situation where there are some parents who don't understand how technology works at all. So it's imperative that we, as the regulators, almost protect the families, right? And so for them, it's a very real, we have to do it in spite of or in lieu of. And so, we're working through that with them. In Australia, there was a look at maybe they include games, but it was more nuanced and focused on social media. And so I think in each country, games have to distinguish why they are different. As I said before, we've got a long history of self-regulatory behavior that's been positive and helpful. And so that means we have something to stand on and to manage that process. But it does get increasingly difficult as games take on, new tools to meet player demands and interest. I think one of the things we've looked at is, the primary purpose of a game is to play, and the primary function of even these social engagement tools on games is to enhance play, not to become a communication device or the like. And so I think that's also had an impression on policymakers that games are really made with a different purpose and in different ways than these other aspects, which are totally based on likes and the like. And that's a big differentiator, and the impact of science shows that as well.
Yeah. From the chat here, we heard, let's see, everybody games. Matt Anderson, hey there, buddy. What's going on? Matt said Tom Hanks did get hurt in the Mazes and Monsters movie about D&D. So, just remember that. It's just terrible.
That's a pull.
And then Rick Velez says, what people said about D&D back in the day is far more true of what's happening on social media today, right? And it is
the devil, the work of the devil.
Well, yeah, it's the ability to manipulate, to change, to influence in ways that can damage people, right? And
to me, what's even more interesting is just the flipping that can happen in public opinion, even within a short 5 years, which is in the middle of the pandemic. Games were viewed as the savior of everybody.
Yep.
And, contributing to our collective mental health, because we were able to talk to each other through games or through social media, online, because we couldn't meet each other in person. And this was so important. Like this was Roblox was great for education, right? For kids learning remotely. And then 5 years later, now it's like we've forgotten all of those things, right? And pushed other agendas, to the fore.
I don't know if we've forgotten, Dean. I think that, unfortunately, video games in many ways becomes a quote-unquote easy target to vilify, right? Because it's either misunderstood or because, there's still in some corners, right, the caveat that it's, disposable content. Or I can't tell you how many times I'd get people saying, how do I get my kid to stop playing Minecraft? And I'm like, have you asked them what they're actually doing?
Maybe if you went and played Minecraft with them, you would understand what they're doing is really, fascinating and creative.
Exactly. And so in this one particular case, I run into these parents again, and they were like, I had no idea. Like, my kid sat me down and we would go on for hours if we would let him. And we didn't realize that he was building logic and creating these traps in the space and building all of these. We just thought it was a game. And it's like, okay, I'll throw this one out there for you all. In doing the Art of Video Games exhibition, which, full disclosure, the ESA Foundation was a sponsor of this, right? So they donated to it. So thank you, ESA, for leaning in to help elevate video games as an art form. I asked a reporter at one point, I said, a reporter was with me when I asked the question of somebody who wasn't quite connecting gameplay and where that sits within society. And I said, okay, so here's what we want to do. We want to build a game that's going to teach your kids. It's a war game, and you're going to teach them that they are able to lay any of their own armies, to waste, their opponents as well. And the whole goal of the game is to force them into absolute submission, that they surrender. Would you let us teach them how to play this game? And they were like, of course not. And so then my question is, why won't you let us teach your kids how to play chess? Because chess is a war game, but we've lived with it for so long that we've, distilled it down to its core basic elements, and now we view it as a marker of human intelligence, right? And so the problem that we've had as an industry, and we've all talked about this at different points, right, along our careers, is it's time. Like we haven't lived with it broadly enough, deeply enough, for enough generations for some of those biases, right, to leave how they frame video games, right?
Yeah. Well, we spend a lot of time trying to make sure we remind people about the power of games, and specifically the things that Dean was raising about. Memories can be short, and so we really have to outline and remind people of the power of games. But we've also found that humanizing it, like asking, does anyone in your life play games? That changes the conversation entirely, because even on our survey evidence, if 2/3 of Americans are playing, someone in your household is probably playing a game,
right?
And what that means is there's a way you can relate to it and have an understanding of the impact it's had.
Yeah.
But it takes that constant reminder. It takes each of us being an advocate in big or small ways at PTA meetings, not just in the halls of Congress, because people have questions, and it's also making sure people understand there's a responsibility of doing each of these things, and it's up to the player and the parents around those players to make sure that they're setting the right guidelines and creating the right tools and incentives for them to do so. So
yeah.
we're excited about it, but it's constant work, and we're always reminding people there are other industries that have it happen in a very natural way, even as they fade. So I don't know who the chess lobby is, but
but they've done a great job, right?
Yeah. But, it's interesting at Games for Change. I think it was during Constance Steinkuhler's talk. She's doing some research on how games can have a positive impact on prisoners, and she's doing this very long longitudinal study. And she pointed to an article from the New York Times a few months ago where Rikers now has video game consoles for people to play, because they found that it not only calms people down, but it also creates an incentive for them to have good behavior and get access to the games.
I saw Hip Hop Gamer was involved in some of that. Yeah.
He's so
fantastic.
Great too. Big shout out to him.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Amazing human being. So, well, Mark, I know that you're joining in late. So before we go ahead and dig into the materials and stuff that the ESA offers, any comments? I know that you were just with Stan at Games for Change. Tell us a bit about.
Yeah, you guys are so freaking serious today. I don't know what to say. I came in here and it was like, I walked into the morgue or something. I'm like, come on, it's games. It's okay.
Oh, we failed. We failed at keeping it cheerful. I know Susan just bounced out. We'll get her back in.
Yeah, we'll get her back. No, I mean, the thing that I'm totally with Stan on what he was saying about, kind of being an advocate in our life, as well as, addressing the important policy issues. The number of people who over the past year I've talked to and help them realize they're a gamer when they're like, well, yeah, of course, every morning I play Duolingo and I do the crossword on New York Times website. I'm like, yeah, you're a gamer. It's okay. We can all be gamers. It's just different kinds of games, or we all need some joy and engagement and like in our life. It's just, I feel like this is a constant drumbeat for me lately, but the Games for Change experience was really good this year. Stan brought up Constance's talk, which was of course amazing. And she's doing great work. It continues to amaze me each year. Like this year, the breadth of things that people were focused on was interestingly different. There were fewer students at the show this year because of the change in venue, which just has impacts in multiple ways. But I missed so many sessions because I kept running into people who were academicians or who were working on titles that, I'd talked with in the past, and they were like, oh, let me sit down and tell you about what we're doing and see if you know people who would be interested to talk, interested to fund, connect us up with people in other countries who are focusing on these issues. It's just always such a fantastic show.
Yeah.
I just want
to. Yeah, Alex Lee went for us this year. I didn't.
Yes, he was amazing.
New York, right?
He did such a good job. Yeah, I sent you a picture of him. He was like, he was doing an interview, and I was like, that's Alex. Boy, he's good at this whole interviewing thing. Yeah, that's good. He hired well.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look, we are going to go ahead and jump over to the ESA's site. Stan, I'd love to point out some of the materials there and have you kind of walk our audience through, the ESA as a resource, right, for our industries. So let's go ahead and head on over there. So maybe you can just kind of walk us through a bit about where people can find out more information just about the industry, and big one up there, of course, is policy priorities. So,
Sure. Let me talk first about maybe some of our studies, and we can talk about what's on our site. So theesa.com, THEESA.com, where we house information about what we do, our mission, but also some studies. Our biggest submission every year is a study that goes back to almost the beginning, I know, to the late 90s, called The Essential Facts About the U.S. Video Game Industry. And that's one where we study consumer demographics, attitudes, and behaviors surrounding video games.
Right.
It's a way to tell our story, and it's a way for anyone in the public to be able to demonstrate the power of games. And this year, for example, is, I think, the second most players we have found, 212 million, which is up 3% last year, and the most since the pandemic. And so it just shows that games continue to be a really important part of the lives of everyday people. And we also include interesting facts, things like people who play sports and play games are now playing the games of their sport. And something like 56% of them find that it improves their gameplay. And so it's, the funny anecdote, this is not a study of anecdote, is I went to a kid birthday party when my son was really young, and they were doing a flag football demonstration with the kids. And the coaches were shocked because the kids could call out plays. They were saying YYZ left bootleg. And they were like, how do these kids know this? And they realized, oh, these kids are playing Madden. And because of the playbooks, you've got these like kids in their early teens who are calling out specific plays. And it was, and so, but it's funny because when you talk to NFL scouts, those players who play now enter the league understanding the playbooks better because they've been studying playbooks because of video games. So there are all these outside impacts.
Well, Stan, I got one for you too about an actual NFL player, former NFL player. Friends of ours, their son was signed to a team, and during a holiday event right before COVID, we were out, had this big neighborhood party, and we were over there, and he walked up and he was like, oh, hey, Mr. Melosinos. And I was like, oh, we're so proud of you, so happy for you, watch you grow up playing, congrats. He's like, no, I'm going to be in Madden next year. Like, that's what he was so excited about, And of course, his mom and I, and their father, my wife were all good friends, everything. And she was like, yeah, that's what he's excited about. And of course, his dad's just like, oh, the video games. And I'm like, yeah, you don't get it. Like, this is where, his head is at, right? And that was so obviously getting to play in the NFL was a big deal. But the fact that he was going to be in Madden, he was so excited. He's like, yeah, my stats suck because I'm just starting, but I'm in there. And I'm like, yes, good job, buddy.
That's fantastic. Another study we put out every other year is an economic impact report demonstrating just the way our industry impacts the larger economic story. That's important to a lot of policymakers because they think about how your industry helps the community around them and around all of us. And so that's always interesting to see the kinds of work people are doing, but also the impact it has on the national economy, on local economies, how we pay taxes. And then we also have a study that we've put out every other year. We've got 2 out now called The Power of Play, where we partner with trade associations from around the world to look at the impact play has throughout different countries. And overall, you'll see similar numbers about how fun games are, the positive impact they have on lower stress and those types of things. But in every country, you'll end up seeing something slightly different about, the kinds of games they like, or about, why they like games a certain way more than the other. So it's always fun to compare Brazil to Japan on gameplay or those types of things. But overall, it reinforces the story that we all share independently about the power of games. So we love putting those stories together. We'll also sometimes think about areas that we haven't thought of. And last year put out a report called Veterans in Video Games, where we looked at the impact that games have in bringing together service members while they're in the theater of war and don't have the capacity, like technologically, to be with friends back home because of where they are. And so it creates this great opportunity for them to spend that downtime together, building up friendships and relationships. And then when they leave, sometimes being away from that environment and with all your friends, it creates some loneliness. Games, again, as a vehicle for people coming together. And so we were able to do a study around it and then host an event on Capitol Hill to demonstrate the power of games, and had veterans who are in our industry talking about what games meant to them. And then having veterans on Capitol Hill who are members of Congress come and meet with them and have their staffs come and support what veterans are doing through video games. So that was a lot of fun. We also had a fun one. This wasn't a study, but more of a panel on video game music. And we brought, composers, some of whom were actually nominated and won Grammy Awards for the music that they create for video games. So again, showcasing to policymakers and to the general public the impact of video games beyond the box.
Yeah.
I'm curious about one thing that, how much it comes up in conversation with you guys too about, and it does relate to our earlier conversation about regulation, I think. And it's, what Matthew Ball called the attention war. And that, I think the good thing about games is that the core of games really is about fun, right? The core loop of games is really fun, right? But, the words that can become sort of confused in the thing are engagement and addiction. Matthew pointed out that the addiction industries appear to be winning in some ways in terms of fast growth. All right, they're prediction markets, sports betting, online gambling, OnlyFans, so on the social media side, YouTube and TikTok, right? And so kids are behaving differently than the kids 20 years ago did, and they may be leaning more into this addiction side of things. How can games win? What can we do to sort of distinguish games from the addiction industries, right? And Matthew was saying this is why the industry slowed down. This is why you're seeing some layoffs now, right? So it's an important thing for games to figure out, I guess, like how to compete with the addiction industries more.
And then we'll take a poll here after we hear from Stan and who believes those numbers. So go ahead.
Yeah.
I think there are two things happening at the same time that allow games not to have to enter that fray. One is, we're seeing in our reporting about how many people are playing more than ever outside of the pandemic, and the amount of revenue the industry is still able to earn, again, second most since the pandemic. And so the industry still is driving forward and growing. At the same time, there are clearly challenges within the industry. And so when you talk about the workforce issues and the like, those are really addressing not the revenue side so much as higher development costs, longer development cycles, and all the things we've been reading about where the industry is trying to become more efficient so that it could create more games and at the same time not lose the humanity. Like one of the interesting things about the AI discussion in our industry, at least among the senior leadership, I should say, is there's a firm view that if you lose the human touch and human intervention, you take away the humanity in games and the fun in games. And I think our industry is in this moment where they're trying to figure out how do we make games faster, less expensive, but still amazing, so that people want to, come and play the games. And so I think those things are operating at the same time, where we're still having growth, but we've got to manage the input side, the cost side, to figure out how to create more efficiency without taking away humanity. So I haven't heard anyone wanting to lean towards what the prediction markets are doing or anything like that. And in fact, one of the great things about our industry is it's inherently good, right? It's inherently a fun and amazing and useful thing. And it's great that we're also using it for educational goals, and it's great that we're able to build other businesses around it. But at the core, if you're not creating something that's fun and compelling and engaging, it really doesn't matter the rest of it. Even if it's an educational game, it still has to be fun for people to want to do it. No one knows that better than Mark.
Yeah. That's the best part.
I mean, I did think there's victories out there that are very interesting to look at, like India as an example. It banned gambling and online gambling, right? But it chose not to touch games, right? And so it understood the difference between these industries, and I think that was a difference between something that was viewed as addiction versus fun.
I do wonder, Susan, given kind of your history in the industry and where you were specifically in helping grow the industry, like, are you seeing parallels or differences in the moral panic that we've been talking about then versus now? Because you were really in the middle of a lot of those storms.
Yeah, I remember I was at Take Two when Mark went to the White House, right in the middle of that whole scandal. Crazy. Well, so I'm in the UK now. I don't know if you know, and so I've gotten fairly involved here and there with government and government regulation and stuff that's happening here, and Yuki's been doing a good job of watching our backs over here about the social media changes, because I think they're about to ban anyone under 16 from social media, like they did in Australia and the UK, and they've been very careful to point out that video games are not lumped into that, as we were talking about. So, so over here, I certainly haven't seen much of it at all. I've always found it remarkable that America always comes back to thinking that violent video games are what caused all these problems, but in the rest of the world, we have violent video games too, and you don't see it happen.
Right.
So,
exactly.
So I certainly haven't heard anything in terms of that. It's definitely the social media thing is definitely the part that people are concerned about. For better or for worse, I have a kid who's almost 18. He's surprisingly pro social media, restrictions. That maybe because he's older than 16, so it doesn't impact him. But
but we're also seeing that sort of sentiment happening in younger generations, just around the massive onslaught of information and content they have. We've talked about this before, about friction maxing certain experiences, right? Like, I don't want a camera that just takes pictures of everything all the time. I want to bring a camera with me that I'm using to take decidedly important pictures, and it changes the relationship between what's being captured, the device, and that person, right? And so I think we are starting to see some of that pushback. And Dean, the one thing I'd like to point out with what Matthew Ball was talking about is it's not. I don't think it's that games are competing necessarily with OnlyFans or anything like that. They're competing against low friction. And immediacy, that and fractional content, like those are the three big buckets, right? And when you can put something in front of somebody where it's literally just one finger tap and one swipe away, now we are just constantly cutting up content in ways that are rewiring the way that we consume those things. We all, I'm sure, have people in our lives where if you put up in front of them, here's a 15-minute YouTube video, they're like, 15 minutes. Right. Give me the 40-second one, right? And because we're not wired to do that. And then we, as big crafted storytellers as an industry, go, all right, now park all of your media consumption, sit down and play my 80-hour game. And your brain's like, I don't know what to do here, right? So I don't think it's those other quote unquote vices or what have you that are the competition. It is the fractional nature of all content and the immediacy of it. That's what we compete with.
My next business idea will be to create a Tamagotchi-sized device that you just have to hit one button over and over, and it releases dopamine straight to your brain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mark, were you able to survive the World Cup, or did you need those hydro breaks?
I always need hydro breaks. World Cup here was amazing.
I did have that thought during the World Cup, is when you talk about how we do live in this slice and dice world, in a normal soccer game, you have 45-minute blocks plus stoppage time, and we became 22 minutes, but it's still for the at least for the modern mind, still a lot of concentration.
It is. I was still on the couch, like playing a game at the same time that I was watching.
Hey, well, listen, I know we are less than 10 minutes away before the hour's up, so I wanted to make sure that we talked a bit about some of the history with ESA, and I went ahead and made sure I grabbed a couple of websites here to talk about. And Stan, you mentioned this. That ESA was started back in 1994. And the Video Game History Foundation just launched a repository of E3 memorabilia, right? Which was the big conference, right? That was under the parenting of the ESA, and now Icon is the next generation of conference there. And so the foundation had brought in a huge kind of like treasure trove of content, more than 1,000 pages of ephemera from the IDSA and Carolyn Rauch specifically, bunch of photographs, industry reports, all of this stuff from way back in the day, right? And for those of us that have been around the industry for a long enough time, very fond memories of what, a spectacle, E3 was. Maybe as I'm digging through a bit of the information here, Stan, maybe you can tell us kind of about Icon and how that is different than what E3 was, and where kind of your thoughts or mission is for Icon moving forward.
Beautiful Icon mug. I love it.
Yeah.
No, we recognized that E3 played such a significant role in our industry, and it was so meaningful to so many people. I got to experience it a few of the years, toward the end when I joined ESA, and it was really a magical moment. And I think what we learned over time is that the way people market, the way companies market to audiences just changes, and the pandemic probably accelerated what would have eventually happened, because as we live in a more digital world and digital outreach is much more common, it made having a trade show much more difficult. And really, the purpose of E3 in the beginning was to bring retailers and game makers together so that they could figure out how many games to ship. How many am I putting on a pallet to arrive by December so that they're in the stores for Q4 sales? I mean, that was really the bottom line. It's tell me in June what I need to press. I'm going to show you what version I have of it now. And then we'll get those things, we'll cellophane them up, and then someone will go purchase it.
Right.
We're in a different era now, and you have games that come out all times of the year and can be very impactful. And so trying to resuscitate a trade show didn't seem like a successful venture. And we weren't sure if we wanted to bring anything back.
Right.
But we heard a couple of things from many people in the industry. One was there was no real major convening of senior leadership. There are amazing shows all around the world, right, and in the US, and they're great. And we enjoy what each of them brings. And so we didn't want to take away from anything anyone else was doing, because you don't need another show just to have another show.
Right.
But we felt that other industries were seizing on games as a growth vehicle and as a selling point. So if you go to CES, there's a gaming pavilion in one of the halls, and there are no games for sale, but there are televisions and headphones and chairs. And if you go to the NAB conference, there are panels on esports, but that's not part of the National Association of Broadcasting's main work. And on and on, we found, even on Capitol Hill, there were groups showcasing different aspects of video games and reaping the benefits of this great industry without us being a part of it. And we thought, well, why aren't we telling the story of the impact of games beyond the industry? And so ICON was an effort to bring not only our senior leadership, but senior leadership from other industries onto the stage and to share and cross-pollinate on information that we could all benefit from, and maybe even to help people generate sales opportunities for one another. There's a lot we have to share with the world about consumer engagement, consumer retention, but also consumer satisfaction. And there's a lot that we want to do in other spheres. And so on the stage, as I said before, we had everyone from the NBA and WWE to Tony Hawk and Morgan Stanley and other, Goldman Sachs, and various leaders from our industry and others. And there were fun conversations as well. Strauss Zelnick shared a bit more about a big game that they happen to be releasing later this year.
Yeah, I hear
yeah,
it.
It was such a good event.
I hear it's gonna be pretty good.
Yeah,
I really loved that you held that. What? Yeah, to Stan, I just want to say thanks for holding that event, because it does seem, I felt like it was really the conversation of great games and their influence and impact on other industries is something that we didn't really have a space for. And we haven't talked about a lot recently. And so to be immersed in that for a few days and meet people who were connected to the industry in ways that I wasn't aware of was really enlightening. So that's why I'm sporting the ICON cup here on my desktop every day.
That's awesome.
So I just want to say thanks.
And whenever you can bring a Delara into your event,
well, first,
you've arrived.
Right. Then, you have to watch out paparazzi and security. Yeah. It's a whole thing with this guy. So something fun that I wanted to make sure that I hit on here is in the Video Game History Foundation, which, again, full disclosure, I'm a founding board member of. Before we all got together, I went ahead and combed through some stuff. And here was a wonderful piece about the many irrational lives of Ken Levine. And one of the things I had to remind myself of was that Susan Cummings wasn't always Susan Cummings. And I found this piece here that said, the first person to really believe in us in BioShock, if it were Susan Lewis at Take-Two, was really the first person to really believe in us in BioShock. If it were not for Susan, BioShock wouldn't exist as you know it. Editor's note, Susan Lewis is now Susan Cummings under contract with Paramount's Game Group.
You got to send me that article.
Well, here's the lovely thing, Susan, is that through the Video Game History Foundation site, you can go search the entire archive for free publicly. Amazing. And in doing so, I said, well, let's find Dean Takahashi in this archive. So here we go.
2,500 matches.
Back in 2003, we have some press release and marketing materials there. Conference program for Dean. I remember this isn't every piece of material there, but the ones that they've went live with. Let's see. For Mr. Mark DeLaura, here we go. 2004 conference program, press release and marketing materials. 2005. Then again, when I remembered Susan Lewis of yummy.com.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yes. Wait, where's my bonus sound? I found you lurking in here. And the panel that you had done was, what the heck was it called? Well, you were on a panel with Alex St. John, Jim Perkins. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. Chris Kranowitz, Kantrowitz, rather. Oh, yeah. So, there's a couple in there. And then I only found 2 for me, because that was my
I
one.
wonder if they found my my old Cuphead video, because
oh my goodness,
it's
Dean!
no longer on the Bedford Beats.
Dean, look, if you were throwing up,
Oh,
if you are throwing up a challenge to find it, I'll get it, buddy. Like Archivist and
I've got to bounce.
Okay, we're gonna let you bounce, but before we do that, real quickly, Mark, tell us what you're playing, buddy.
Well, in the spare moments I have here and there, I'm still jumping into Arc Raiders with my brother, because it's a great opportunity to have some fun and catch up. And the good news is you can play Arc Raiders in a PvE mode, so I don't get sniped by other people.
Nice.
I suck at it. But it's still fun. Stan, thank you. I just want to say thank you for being here and being such a great spokesperson and representative of the game industry for all of us in DC and around the world. It's been a pleasure working with you. And I'm going to bounce out.
Awesome. Thanks for joining, Mark. All righty. And all right, so Stan, this is what we do as we wrap up. Tell us, what are you playing right now? You have a bunch of ephemera back. We may have to have you back on so we can talk about the collection. Yeah. But what are you playing right now?
Actually, the funny thing about this was during the pandemic, I found that if I had to do interviews or things with a dog and a kid, and it just didn't work. But this was barren. So then I thought, I have all these things that are just lying around the office. Maybe I can organize them so it's not so barren.
Yeah.
So it's been fun. Now, I love playing games I can get in and out of. I love playing sports games. I love playing fighting games. I love my Street Fighters. I love my Maddens and my NBA 2Ks. And, my son's more of a Smash player. So when we play together, I just get beaten up playing Smash. But whenever he's not around, and since he's in college, I just try all kinds of games.
That's awesome. Awesome. Susan, how about you?
At the moment, I have finally played through every character on Slay the Spire 2. Got to the boss. Now I'm working for the Ascension. Yeah, the warrior. It was a real pain in the ass to get through it to find the right deck.
Awesome.
Yeah, that and our game is pretty much all I have time to play right now.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Dean, how about you, buddy?
It's in early access as of yesterday, but I've been playing Halo Campaign Evolved, the remake of the original Halo.
Oh, yeah.
In Unreal Engine 5, yeah.
Very, very cool. Very cool. Well, for my part, me, classic gamer guy, but I have been diving into a bit more of the content catalog, actually, that Luna, the game streaming service that Amazon operates, has released. And they just announced the release of Batman Caped Crusader Chronicles, which launched alongside the animated series. So I'm looking forward to jumping into some of that this weekend, but haven't had a whole heck of a lot of time to play, a whole lot. And then also digging through Cyberpunk 2077 to try to go ahead and finish, finally, mainline campaign. But that's about it. So I want to thank Stan for joining us today here on Boss Rush. It was an absolute pleasure to have you here. And thank you for all the work that the ESA does to continue to, support the industry, to provide the incredible amount of research and materials you do, the programs that the ESA supports and sponsors, everything from the charity work to work with veterans, really just absolutely amazing. So again, thank you so much for spending the time with us. And for those of you that joined today, please go ahead and tell your friends about the live every Friday, 12:30 Eastern, 9:30 Pacific. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. So thanks everybody for joining, and hope you have an awesome weekend and a great rest of your week. And we'll see you next week on Boss Rush. Bye.